Welcome, everyone. At this point, I'll announce that we are, of course, recording this for posterity. And present with us at the meeting at this point are Supervisors Doug Rushton and Helen Wheatley, myself, Chair TJ Johnson. We have our Executive Director, Sarah Moorhead. We have Ben Cushman, our legal counsel from the Deschutes Law Group. And it looks like Gene Fike from the State Conservation Commission is here as well. So welcome, everyone. The first item, or the next item on our agenda here, is the agenda review. There's one addition we want that I'll be proposing here, and Sarah sent out an email a little while ago. This has to do with the shore-friendly consulting services contract for a consulting geologist. I'd like to place that as item 7E on our agenda and move the October work session topic list down and make that 7F. Are there any other changes from board members or staff to our agenda?
No, I will second that motion.
Well, there hasn't been a motion yet. I was suggesting that we amend the agenda. I would welcome a motion now to approve our amended agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved by Doug. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Helen. Okay. Roll call vote. Doug?
Yes.
Helen?
Yep.
Betsy, is that you there? No,
Yeah.
You're not here yet.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Betsy. How do you vote?
I vote aye.
Aye. David is not here yet. Chair votes aye. So that means we've got an approved agenda as amended. Item 3 on our agenda then is the consent agenda. We have 3 items on consent tonight. We have the minutes of the August 28th, 2020 board meeting. We have the August financial report, and we have the resolution, WACD resolution on State Conservation Commission staff evaluation that we worked on in our previous work session. So is there a motion on the consent agenda? Anyone? Someone?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, it's been moved by Betsy. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Helen. Roll call vote. Betsy?
Aye.
Helen?
Aye.
Doug? Doug?
I'm sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Aye.
Okay. Doug votes aye, and I vote aye. So we have passed our consent agenda. That moves us to item 4, public comment. Is there any member of the public online here that would like to address the board this evening? Don't see anyone?
TJ?
Yes.
Can I make a comment? Just because we've had a little bit of a typo in the meeting materials and we've posted to our website and social media, would you consider asking for public comment later in the meeting in case there are folks that join us late?
I think that's an appropriate idea. We'll loop back to that at the end of the meeting if there's any additional public comment. Thank you, Sarah. Okay. So with that, then let's move to item 5, our partner reports. First up is Gene Fike from the Conservation Commission. Hello, Gene.
Hello, how is everybody?
All good.
Let's see, great. Is the sound okay? I'm getting a little echo. Is it all right for you?
Okay for
Yeah.
me.
Okay, great. So a couple of things I want to make sure are on your radar. So a few things to do with elections. This Saturday, first and foremost, I hope you've heard about an all-district elections conversation. It's this Saturday, as I said, between 9 and 12:30. I'll put the registration link in the follow-up if you didn't see it on GovDelivery. That is the sort of big picture conversation, right? It's the kinds of things that you filled out in the survey, I don't know how many months back. Things like, should districts be on the general ballot? Should terms be different? Those kinds of big picture things. So that's sort of one category of election stuff. As you're probably aware, the Conservation Commission at its most recent meeting passed a number of smaller scale changes to CD elections. These are proposed changes to the WAC, to the rules, as well as things that are within the Commission's authority to change. I'll post in my email what there is, which is just sort of the summary of actions taken by the Commission. I expect there will be a more complete treatment of that coming out soon, so please look for that. One of the sort of more important things to be aware of is that the auto cancellation provision is going to be removed. So if there is only one qualified candidate that gets the paperwork in on time, there's no longer the option to cancel that election. There are other changes you should be aware of that affect noticing, so you'll want to make sure as you're making your plans for the election that you're tracking all of that. Also, there is now also a training requirement. At least one member of the district staff is required to be trained. Better if there's more than one. Always good to have a backup and another person to bounce things off of. So that will be first made available on October the 2nd. That's the opportunity for sort of live question and answer, but it will be recorded. So if that timing doesn't work out, that's okay. You can have folks take it at a later time. Questions about any of those items before I move on to the next category?
I would just like to be sure I understood you that if we only have one candidate running for a position, that takes effect for this 2021 election?
Yeah, great clarification, thank you. Yes, all of the changes that the Commission made this last meeting will take effect this cycle. Yeah, thank you for asking that. That's important to emphasize. Yeah, so, people are, I'm sorry, say again?
What was the rationale for that?
So there's been a lot of discussion of that in the legislature. People have expressed concern that only a few elections relative to the number of potential elections across the state were actually held. And it's been a consistent concern that we've heard at the legislature. And I don't want to speak for the decision makers, the Commission, but I understand that was a major concern for them, thinking about the upcoming session in particular.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. So the other things I want to make sure you're aware of, WDSW has made a request of the Commission to be added as a full voting member of that governing body, and the commissioners wanted to hear from districts before responding to that request. And so a number of GovDelivery items went out. There's a memo that I think will help frame up the issue very well for you, and then there's a survey. We're hoping to get survey responses back by the end of October, so there's still time to consider it if you'd like to as a board. Let me know if there are questions about that. A couple other just things to be aware of. There's an update to the supervisor reference. This was traditionally a hard copy item, sort of spiral bound. We don't have funds to print it right now, but there's an electronic version now up on the website, and I'll give you a link in the follow-up email. I think it's actually maybe easier to use in electronic format. You can search for acronyms and that kind of thing. So I think it might actually be better in electronic format, but we'll someday hopefully print it as well. If you haven't seen the new website over at the Commission, I think it looks great. Things may not be quite where you're used to them, so look around a little bit. If you can't find something, let me know. I'll help you out. And then there are a couple of the supervisor development modules that Stu Treefry was working on. Do you remember we didn't let him retire until he built all 4 of these and recorded them? So we're rolling them out kind of one at a time. So the governance one is out and the policy one is out. Those are posted on the website. Some boards are planning to watch them as a board, which I think is a nice opportunity, but you can also, of course, watch them on your own.
I listened to one myself, and I personally would not recommend that we do it as a group because it was nice to be able to pause to take notes.
Mm,
And I'm
yeah,
happy
that
to
makes
know
sense.
I'm happy to know that I was right in identifying him as the narrator. He doesn't get credit, or it doesn't say it anywhere.
It doesn't? I
I
didn't
didn't
notice
see it.
that.
I didn't see
Oh
it.
dear. Yeah, no, that voice. There's only one Stu Tree Fry in the world.
It's
Yeah,
got a great voice.
he's got a great voice. Yeah. Okay, that was all I had. Is there anything else people would like to know about?
Yeah, I had a question, Gene, in regards to the WDFW issue. You mentioned there'll be a survey and some additional information. Will that be out in time for us to discuss that issue at our October 8th work session?
Yes, it's actually available now, and I'll link it there so it's just at the top of your email pile in my follow-up email. But just to sort of frame it up a little bit, if you haven't dug into it yet, the thinking was that as people considered that question, they might want to think about sort of what is the representation on the governing body right now, and how would adding a voting member shift that, right? So some of the options in the survey are, well, one is yes, one is no, one is yes, but also add a representative from another representative of conservation districts. Another is yes, but add a tribal representative. Another is yes, but add somebody to represent small acre and urban agriculture, right? To sort of offset, if you like, the way different types of interests are represented on the body. And I'll make sure I send all that to you tomorrow with the follow-up email.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Sarah, I know you're tracking work session topics. I'd like to make sure we put this on our October work session agenda and spend a few minutes talking about it.
Great, will do.
Okay. Thanks, Gene. Anything else for Gene from board members? Okay. If not, then let's move on to the WACD and NACD reports. Doug, do you have anything to add to what you sent out in writing?
No, I do not. Other than Stu Tree Fry used to be the announcer at the WSU Stadium, and is also now an associate supervisor on the Pierce CD.
Great.
And that's my update.
All right. Thank you, Doug. For the record, too, I will also note that David Ayal, Supervisor Ayal, has now joined us. Hello, Davis. So we have all of us here at this point.
So,
we're on to item 5D then, of the Washington State Department of Ecology report. Alina Reynolds. Hello, Alina.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Elena Reynolds, and I am going to give you a quick update. So for me personally, I've been responding to a couple ERDS complaints involving some home improvement projects where they've cut down trees without possibly having proper permits. I've also been working on my watershed assessments and collaborating with the local health department, as well as Karen a little bit or as much as she is allowed. And we continue to partner with our staff and Karen, as well as our other PIC partners, to develop a flow chart to coordinate our environmental reporting and tracking systems. We'll be having our quarterly meeting with WSDA, WSCC, and WACD to communicate ways that we can work together to support and engage with the agricultural community in a constructive way. That's all for me. For my partners, my teammates, I don't know if you're familiar with Jennifer Riedmeyer, but she is also working in Thurston County in the south side of that doesn't drain into the Puget Sound. She has been dealing with a couple ERDs, one with the WSDA regarding manure odor from Black River. Those issues are being addressed with the WSDA staff. And then another complaint she's responding to is is in Bucota. Sorry about that. Regarding oil leaking from vehicles and cattle accessing the creek, and staff has made a visit and saw no apparent problem. That's all I have for you all. I'd be happy to take questions now and would be able to relay any questions I can't answer directly because it's not in my area, but I will be happy to relay those to you.
Here, any
Elena?
questions? Elena.
Yeah, I have a couple.
Go ahead.
Could you, first of all, could you just back up a second and explain again what's going on with the Black River, Black Lake watershed? I didn't, it sort of faded in and out. I couldn't hear it very well.
Oh, my apologies. So we receive complaints through a system that relays those to and refers them to our local partners. And anyone can make this kind of complaint. It's called an ERTS, or Environmental Reporting and Tracking System. And we received one that Jennifer, my coworker, is working with WSDA staff to respond to a manure odor complaint that is happening in the Black River area.
Okay. And then could you go back a little bit to you said you're working on watershed assessments. Could you explain a little bit about that?
Oh, of course. So I am tasked with doing watershed assessments. So going out in my car or using remote access such as GIS data and GIS imagery and trying to identify pollution sources for bacterial pollution specifically that affect the specific watersheds that drain into the Puget Sound. Specifically in Thurston County, that would be Henderson Inlet, Nisqually Reach, and Eld Inlet. And those are identified as at-risk or endangered watersheds that have shellfish growing areas in them.
So it's areas with
That's a program.
shellfish then.
Correct. And those are areas that I specifically focus in.
Okay. Thanks.
No problem. I'm happy to answer questions that I have answers to.
Anything else for Elena? Okay, thank you. We in the past, under partner reports, we did have reports from Natural Resources Conservation Service, but they've been unable to be a part of our meetings for quite some time. However, we have a new representative here in our region at the NRCS, and he's on the call tonight. So I'd like to take a minute here and ask Robin if you'd like to introduce yourself and share anything that you might want to in terms of a partner report from NRCS, and welcome. And if you're trying to talk, you may be on mute because we're not hearing you. No. Are you there, Robin? Okay. He is not there. So I guess we'll move on and possibly circle back to that later in the meeting. That concludes item 5. Let's move to item 6. COVID update. Sarah.
All right. Thank you. And I just got a chat from Robin that he's having some technical difficulties with his mic. So if he gets that working later on in the meeting, then I'll let you know.
Okay.
As far as the COVID-19 update goes, we are again working with these rolling OPMA guidelines and extensions. Recently, there was some guidance that came out in areas that are heavily impacted by wildfire and have degraded telecommunication systems, which is not us, that have some specific allowances. So again, we're kind of keeping hold on the status quo, and we'll continue to monitor that. No expected changes anytime soon on the remote nature of our meetings. On another front, we are gearing up for Orca Recovery Day. And so there was included in my report a little save the date for that. Information is coming out this week with details from staff about locations and volunteering. We connected with the Thurston County, the executive director of the Thurston County Health Department prior to scheduling this, but talked about doing some socially distant, limited capacity, family group organized volunteer events that were outdoors, and kind of ran through our volunteer protocol with them and got the okay and the go ahead to offer some of these opportunities. And so we're going to trial Orca Recovery Day and doing some invasive species removal with some very spread out and clearly marked and separated spaces for family groups or individuals to come out. And so space is limited, and there's a reservation system, and there's different time slots that folks can sign up for. But it's definitely getting folks out to do something positive during this time to help raise awareness of salmon and orca recovery and put tools in people's hands so that they can come and do something good. So we're excited that we're able to offer this year when so many things are not being offered, and look forward to evaluating that to see if there are other opportunities that we might be able to offer this fall and winter.
Anything further on COVID, Sarah?
That's the update that I have at this time. And I do have a note, unless there's any questions, that Robin has called in on the phone, and so he has audio linked up.
Okay, let's check first. Are there any questions for Sarah for her COVID report from board members? Okay, not hearing any. So let's go back then. It sounds like we have Robin Buckingham on the phone now. So Robin, would you like to introduce yourself and just share a little about NRCS?
Sure. Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. You got me all teed up, and then technology did not want to cooperate. So good evening, everybody. Good to be back in Thurston County, and good to see some familiar names on the phone tonight. For those of you who don't know me, I am the new resource conservationist over here in the Olympia Field office with the Natural Resources Conservation Service. My background is firmly rooted in conservation districts. I worked for the past couple years up in Pierce County at the Pierce CD, and before that was actually over there in Mottman in the Thurston Conservation District office. So it's very surreal to be on the other side of this phone call tonight. First, I want to say thank you to Betsy and Sarah for completing the civil rights interview form that I sent over just a couple weeks ago. That was very helpful and much appreciated. For those of you who may not have seen the email or had questions about what that request was about, NRCS does periodic reviews of our civil rights compliance and for its funded partners as well. So the interview form is part of our program delivery evaluation, specifically that partner responsibility piece. Typically a little bit more applicable in areas where NRCS and the CDs are firmly intertwined, co-housed, co-delivering programs, that kind of thing. So there may have been, some disconnect between that and the relationship that we currently have. But again, appreciate the attention to that. Just also want to note that those are typically conducted in person. So looks like we haven't had a review here in the Olympia Field office for some time. I don't know that it'll come around in the next 5 or so years, but that request may come back up for a face-to-face interview on that topic. Other than that, the big news, of course, of the day is our fiscal year 2021 Environmental Qualities Incentive Program signups, which are now open. You can't see me, I'm doing air quotes. We do accept applications year-round for interested participants, but tend to announce a sign-up period for folks to get their ducks in a row for ranking come the next fiscal year. So we're in that period right now. Folks have until Friday, November 20th to get their applications in. And crucially, they need to have all of their FSA eligibility and farm records established by that date to get consideration for fiscal year 21. So we've done a big blast about this. Folks have probably seen it. If you're out talking to folks, please, by all means, spread the word and let folks know about the EQIP sign-up period. Just some notes on that. You'll see some familiar fund pools from years previous. Of course, the High Tunnel Initiative, which is always popular to get folks high tunnels on diversity of operations is back, $15,000 cap for folks. Conservation activity plans, these are things such as forest management plans or comprehensive nutrient management plans. That's a big component as well this year. CNMP or comprehensive nutrient management plan implementation, obviously a focus. We've got a state wildlife pool, state soil health pool, and then of course our local working group priorities of terrestrial habitat, sediment delivery to water bodies, compaction, and nutrients to surface water. So those are just a kind of a selection of the fund pools that we'll be working out of to get folks the conservation they need on the ground. Also thought I would give just a little retrospective as we're closing out the federal fiscal year and give you a sense of where we're at here in the county. Currently, we have 36 active contracts on about 2,600 acres with over $1 million. Actually, that's $1.5 million obligated for conservation. In the past year here in fiscal year 20, we obligated 6 contracts on around 200 acres with about $220,000 total obligation. This year was kind of a stranger. It's been a stranger for many reasons, and NRCS has not been immune to this. In addition to COVID and wildfires and everything else going on, we had very short sign-up timeline, a change in our contracting software and our planning software for folks. So I know our soil conservationist here in the office, Tara Donahoe, who some of you may have met, did a tremendous job getting those contracts lined up, and I think we'll be in a good position for this fiscal year 21 because of that. Let's see if I have anything else on my list here. Just a conservation stewardship plan, just a very small plug for that program. It's traditionally been more of an east side centric program, but is getting more play here on the west side these days. And the general outline is that, it pays participants for the good conservation work that they've already done. They get paid an amount for the resource concerns they've already addressed, and then supports their continued enhancement of natural resource management by paying them for basically enhanced conservation practices. So if you know any producers that have gone above and beyond and are still interested in doing more, this could be a good option for them. I will be sure to get more details out when the sign-up period for that is announced. Otherwise, I think that's all I have, unless folks have questions for me.
Great, thank you, Robin. Are there any questions for Robin from board members? It doesn't sound like it, so thank
Good to
you.
see you back in town, Robin.
Oh. Sorry, Doug, say again.
It's good to see Robin back in town. I had to turn off the mic button. Sorry.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, it is good to see Robin back in town. In addition to him being a former student of mine at Evergreen, Robin is actually the person who wrote my farm plan when he was working for Thurston Conservation District. So good to have you back in the field.
Good to be here.
We'll move on then to item 7 on our agenda. 7A, Conservation and Education Center Needs Assessment. Just in terms of context here, we had asked that staff do a little bit more digging on the preliminary list that they provided us of needs for Conservation Education Center. And the idea is we're trying to get some kind of bounds around this thing so that we can go forward in 2021 to hire a consultant to help us do some financial feasibility analysis to see what's possible financially based on the needs that we're identifying for our space. So Sarah's got this matrix she's put together here that gives us a little bit more detail than where we were at in the past. And I'm hoping that this conversation, we can take a look at that, provide additional feedback to Sarah, any questions that we might have to answer, and then that'll kind of set us up to move forward, as I say, in 2021 with retaining a consultant to take it to the next level. So with that, Sarah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, TJ. So you saw this item in your packet. This is a little bit more information and at another level than previous iterations, but still includes all of those similar components of office buildings and demonstration sites that we've been working on as a board and staff collaboratively for a while now. I did, just in the approach that I took on this, and I will give the disclaimer that you know, architectural design and you know, creating spatially blueprints and things is certainly not something that's part of my skill set, but I did review our existing building design and blueprints, as well as the existing building design and blueprints of the Pierce Conservation District building, knowing that Thurston CD is likely to land somewhere in the middle of that, and was able to find some really helpful information in terms of estimating square footage for meeting space sizes and offices and things like that. So again, just this is definitely a base estimate, like TJ said, that can inform a consultant or someone else to move from to do a more accurate look, but so definitely a rough sketch, but it's on here, and so I just wanted to share that on this table. You'll see the first sort of section, or the first table in your packet, really identifies the internal needs of the office space first. So it goes sort of by use type in terms of rooms in the first column, and then sort of what a minimum need is. And this is based on about a staff of 20. We are going to get close to that, you know, this year. So that gives us a few positions worth of growth, should that be in the district's future, as well as enough space for storage and for community and public meeting spaces and involvement. You'll notice that the third column is sort of an ideal need. If we were presented with an opportunity, there's some additional pieces there for more space or more meeting space or educational or demonstration spaces to just continue to add to a community resource and to continue to add value. So I think at this point, unless folks would really like to walk through this in detail, I would be more than happy to answer any questions or focus discussion on any particular point that the board is interested.
I've got a few comments. This is Doug. I'm assuming you can hear me, which may be a bad assumption.
I can hear you, Doug. Sorry, I turned my mic on mute.
Okay. I think it looks really good. A couple of suggestions for the vision. The second to last bullet, prosperous and sustainable working lands. I think we want to add all lands, because I can remember we had a program where we worked with homeowners to not over fertilize their lawn and stuff like that. So we don't want, while we focus on working lands, I think we need to not overlook those, just backyard gardens and whatnot. And then the last bullet under the vision, sustainable and consistent funding to achieve our mission. That sounds self-serving to me. I would put after to achieve our mission of supporting the people of Thurston County.
Thank you, Doug. So I should preface that I copied the mission, function, and vision sections of this out of our strategic plan. When
I
put
figured
this
you did.
Yeah. So
But I think
certainly,
they need to be changed.
okay.
And more substantively, under one of the categories, parking and accessibility, I think we need to ensure that whatever we get is ADA compliant. And that would include, and I'm sensitive to this now because I have a handicap parking sticker, that we have at least a couple of spaces for handicap parking.
I think that would be required by the,
I don't want to assume that.
no.
It is required, but if we're planning, we need to plan that in there.
While we're talking about parking, if I may interrupt, I would like to see this area be permeable, permeable surface as well.
Yes.
Sorry, folks, my internet dropped there for a few minutes, but I'm back online now.
So
You missed the best part. Jeez.
we were just going over some of the components of the parking and accessibility. So yes, those are excellent points. Making sure that we're spelling out that we need things like ADA parking, permeable pavement. You'll notice that the narrative version of this that was that was sent out prior to our work session had a lot more of those types of details. This is pared down mostly to look at things for when the board is looking at hiring a consultant to talk about cost and feasibility. So some of those details were either synthesized or removed in these tables. So I'm happy to add those back.
Yeah. Well, I
will also note that depending on which jurisdiction we wind up locating in, there will be bicycle parking requirements, and usually the way they work is it's a percentage or a ratio of vehicle parking, and the standard is generally covered bicycle parking. So that's just another little detail we'll have to pay attention to down the line.
I like it.
This is Helen. I'm not sure I fully understand the structure of this chart. If it's an ideal need, like say looking at long-term project workspace / map room, it's not under minimum need. It's under, there's nothing under minimum need, but there's something under ideal need. So is that a way of saying that it's expendable? Because breakout meeting space is also, it says breakout meeting spaces.
Yeah.
Doesn't really, it doesn't specify minimum of 1, maximum of 3, or something like that. And I don't see. I think maybe last time we talked about this a little bit, that the question of whether there should be a larger meeting space or not. Did you decide to just drop that because it wouldn't really be necessary?
I'm happy to talk about these pieces. So the way that this is structured, you'll notice that there are some gaps where there's not an ideal need in a certain category on some of them, and there's not, a sort of a minimum need in some of those categories. So, for example, the long-term project workspace is essentially it's a workspace that we envision staff could utilize for long-term projects that could spread out materials and physical work products that they could work on over time and come back to, whereas that's sometimes conducive to using like a conference room table, unless you have meetings in there frequently in which materials can't be left out because then the room is not usable for the next party. So it's something that is in the ideal need because staff definitely needs space to work on projects long term and to spread out materials and maps and things when they're doing planning. And if we don't so this is where the feasibility comes in, is there's not really a minimum room size, for that space. About 500 square feet would be sufficient for that. But if we had to essentially sacrifice something for a more feasible or more modest priced building, that's one of the things that we could use a conference room, and staff could just haul materials back and forth and take maps up and down and that sort of a thing. So on some of them, you'll notice like the restrooms is one of them, conference room space you'll see up here. We have one large conference room, public meeting.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I missed that. Okay.
Yeah, and so if feasible, it would be great to have two. It would be great to have a smaller meeting space as well, because we often have multiple meetings happening at the same time at the district, and so being able to have a larger space for large group meetings and public events, and then a small meeting space for executive sessions or small group meetings, or if, again, we have a double booked conference room, which happens often, especially as staff grows, having that additional one would be great. But, as long as we have one public meeting space, we fulfill that requirement of having a home for that type of activity.
So Sarah, so just to make sure I understand, so what you're saying, the absolute minimum would be just the one large conference room space, and then from there you would tack on a project room, project/conference room, and then other breakout meeting space. But the bare minimum requirement would be the large conference room. Is that correct?
That is just about correct. So for this conference room line here, which I'm sorry, there's a page break. I'm proposing that at a minimum we have one large public meeting space conference room. If feasible, we have two separate rooms that are dedicated to meetings, conferences, and public events. Lower down on the list, and this is where, it's sort of at the discretion of the board and further refinement in terms of need, is also, if feasible, a separate map room and workspace would be great. Again, a little less square footage there is needed for that one. So if we find an existing structure and it meets a different spatial need, the map room versus a small conference room, those are different functions, I suppose. The breakout meeting spaces was the one that I so confusingly titled organic meeting spaces in the last iteration, if you remember that. This is really something that I noticed and really enjoyed about the Pierce Conservation District building, is that they took advantage of small spaces in their hallways, little alcoves at the end, and they set up really small, one table and a couple of chairs, or a bench or something, so that as folks were collaborating throughout the building, or had cooperators come in that if individual offices were too small for a meeting, they had these other spaces that they could go. And again, just trying to offset meeting use from that one large conference room or potentially, you know, 2 meeting rooms. So trying to find ways to creatively use small spaces in the building. And I thought that was a really good one. I hope that
If I
answered
could
your
just
question, Helen. Let me know if it didn't.
If I could jump in here for a second too, the way I think about this matrix that Sarah's put together is we ask her to go off and come back with the things that we have to have and the things the must-haves and the nice-to-haves. And I think that the category that she has called minimum needs are the must-haves, and the things she calls ideal needs are the nice-to-haves. To tie this back to how we were talking about this originally a couple meetings back.
I concur.
Right. And then just one more question in that regard. So then we have stuff that is not in the chart. It's sort of tacked on. So you've got like ADA accessibility, it's just kind of because that's not a space requirement. On the, those are all givens on the first chunk. On the second one, I just wanted to check in with people, other outdoor needs. Do we have any sense of what is really must have? Like, I would certainly like to say to anybody that is thinking about designing this, that solar would be a must have, but maybe other people don't agree with that. What do we think about those elements?
Yeah,
And,
in fact, I think that's a good catch, Helen. Solar, and I would even just sort of put green building. I mean, as we're going into this, just sort of what's the ideal scenario? Sure, if we could do like a LEED certified gold building that's completely solar, that sort of stuff. It's worth looking at in the financial feasibility status, even if it turns out in the end that it might be cost prohibitive.
yeah, personally,
yeah, I wanted to make that comment too. I think the solar panels and LEED certifications, they're nice things, but they get very expensive.
Yeah,
and,
they sure do.
It'd be nice to see what a cost would be, but just be prepared in the end. I think as far as energy savings go, Washington State has a really good energy code. So even if we don't get the solar panels or the LEED certification, we're still going to wind up with a very green building, I'm sure.
And do I remember right that that Tom also said that they didn't get LEED certified, but that they pretty much did everything that was required?
yeah,
That was my recollection.
I don't quite understand what the benefit of LEED certification is. It's LEED, by the way. I mean, is there any reason? I mean, I would put, green building as a high priority, but for me, LEED certification is, I don't really care about that unless there's a reason to.
I think, if you go back 10 or 15 years, when all of this stuff started, it was more important and it was sort of driving the innovation and the changes through the LEED program. But I agree that these days there's less focus on LEED certification and just more generally focusing on green building technology.
Yeah. And for solar, I mean, things like that, it may just be being careful to build that capacity in, whether it's actually installed at any given point, but just to be careful to make sure that it's a minimum standard, that there's some kind of capacity to move in that direction when it becomes feasible.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I don't know, but I don't think the whole building would be able to be powered by solar. Typically now it's easy to retrofit. You put the panels in and you hook it up and you sell it back to the power company when you can't use it, or rather than having a battery thing, they rarely do the battery storage. It's not very feasible because there's a lot of maintenance unless you're like off the grid for some reason, you know, some physical reason.
Yeah. And then I just wanted to hear about what people think about the minimum acreage, because I know that was something we talked about before too.
Can we move not off the green stuff for a second?
Sorry.
I think, you know,
yeah.
These are just tickler things. I mean, for me, you know, solar, you're talking passive, you're talking active. I mean, this is just a tickler list to keep us thinking and not forget an idea. And, you know, to me, we're in Washington State, the evergreen state, Western hemlock's our state tree. You know, we ought to think about, you know, the wood part of it, which is part of the green building, the tickler list. So I'd like to see us not get hung up on the exact wording and all the detail and leave that up to staff.
If I could throw something in, there's a current buzzword used in architectural circles that you might want to mention. It's called future proofing, and that's what you're talking about when you're saying make sure that it can be expandable to include solar panels and or solar power. If you mention to an architect that you want to future proof the building, that's the type of thing they'll be talking about.
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, Doug, did you have anything further on that point?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Helen had begun to raise the issue of acreage, and I'd like to go there too, because I had some questions about that. It strikes me that 5 acres might be more than we need for a minimum need, but it really sort of depends on what our vision is, particularly for the demonstration site, which is the biggest chunk of that. You know, it's one thing if we're just doing kind of small demonstrations of some of these technologies. You know, this is a pollinator strip or a hedgerow. It would be a different thing if we wanted to have enough space to show like equipment demonstration, how to use a plow, or a manure spreader, something that would require more space. And I guess I'm okay with the number that we have here now in terms of 5 acres, but I also think we could really achieve our goals of education and demonstration on less acreage if the more acreage scenario becomes cost prohibitive. In other words, I still think we can get to our educational goal even if we don't have 5 acres to do it.
And I have a comment. So we had talked about definitely wanting to be visible. You know, where we are now, we're tucked away in this, whatever they call that park, industrial park. But when we talk about acreage, that's going to be not, you know, I don't know where that's going to be. That's going to be affordable and visible. It would be great if we could somehow, like, wouldn't it be cool if we could be a part of one of the land trusts or adjacent to a land trust, I'm thinking the Scatter Creek one, but that's pretty out of the way. So, you know, that I'm just having trouble picturing the 5 acres and visibility. That will be a real tricky thing to find with land prices, what they are.
Well, so Betsy, here's a picture you can put in your mind on that front. The Spooner Farm property that we're working on Yelm Highway. Highly visible, urban area, but still a lot of space.
Yep. Affordable?
Don't know the answer to that yet. We're still working with the city on that issue.
Okay.
But I think my point is that I think you have a good point, that there's going to be some trade-offs here in terms of costs and visibility and access and things. But again, I think we should be thinking about, at this point, what's the ultimate, kind of the best case scenario. And then once we start to get some financial numbers, then you start to winnow it down rather than prejudging what is or isn't possible before we really dig into the finances.
TJ, can I add a couple of thoughts for the board to ponder around the acreage for the next time we chat?
Yes.
I think that's a good point that the board raises in terms of visibility. And I think looking at visibility to whom is something worth pondering. Who knows about us and who doesn't? Who do we want to raise that presence to? You know, who's going to seek us out no matter where we are because they use our services or know about us? So visibility to whom and how, you know, having folks drive by us and say, oh, what's a conservation district? Oh, there's a, you know, let me pull in and see, versus having a facility that offers some community or public benefit that people naturally go to participate in that opportunity, versus, you know, a space that has a lot of educational you know, space and events and trainings for people to participate in, that draws people to a location. So I think that how people access us and who accesses us, you know, maybe having some more conversation about where the district services, you know, where we might need to focus some more in terms of outreach and how we want to do that to the community. And then I would also say, I think you brought up a great point. I think Betsy and TJ, you were talking about this as well, is exploring partnerships, I think, can open new doors for the district. So working with a land trust on a conserved property might dramatically decrease the amount of the cost associated, but it might increase the acreage associated. Or working with other jurisdictions that might be looking for some entity to provide stewardship of a landscape, or mitigation or support that way. So I think your last comment, TJ, was spot on. Is there might be 100 different scenarios to get the district conservation education center to where the board wants to be, and we have a lot to explore still. That's it. Thank you.
And I'm going to also suggest, given the other work we have on our agenda yet to do tonight, I'm going to ask if there's any more pressing comments or feedback to Sarah at this point. And we're clearly going to see this again multiple times, but we have other things to do as well. So are there any other things that have to be said this evening? Okay. I'm not hearing anything. So I think the next step here, if I can summarize, is let's all of us continue to take a look at this thing, provide additional feedback to Sarah, and we will bring this back with those additional comments at a work session, would be my guess, since we seem to be coming back to this pretty much every meeting. Maybe it'll be our October work session. And then continue to drill down on this stuff. If that's okay with folks?
Sounds good.
Yep.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Then with
And
that, let's then move on to item 7B, the elections, 2021 elections discussion. I was not at our last work session due to power outage, but I understand this conversation started there, and I think our hope here is to get some clear direction to staff so that they would be able to bring us back the necessary resolutions and policy at either our October or our November, so that we can move forward with 2021 elections. So with that context, do you want to take it, Sarah?
Yeah, thanks, TJ. A couple of points just to reiterate specifically that staff needs some feedback and guidance on are when would the board like to adopt an elections resolution, October board meeting or November. knowing that there's a specific requirement for advertising and making public notices available and published in the newspaper that staff will need to start working on. And especially if the October board meeting is selected, we'll have to start publishing those notices before the October work session. So now would be the time to provide that direction to staff. And again, that's just posting notices of the board's intent to adopt a resolution. So that still means that we can discuss opportunities and ideas at the work session and refine that. Staff can bring the draft resolution to the October work session for the board to review and revise. But just that notice of intent would need to be submitted and out into the public before the October work session date. So that's the first piece, is just when that resolution is adopted. The resolution does have specific criteria and content that it puts into place. One of those is the election supervisor. It names an election supervisor. In the past couple of years, it's been Nora White who presented at the work session, staff at the district, but it could be other staff, it could be a board member, other individual. I highly recommend Nora because she's fantastic and really has this dialed in. And it sets the date, the place, and the time of the actual election day, as well as mechanisms for people to access ballots. So staff intend to bring an example or draft resolution to the October board meeting to synthesize all of those points with the board, but having some direction on the mechanism would really be the second point for where we're at tonight. So first point is, when would you like to entertain that resolution for adoption? And the second point is, does the board have some feedback about the mechanism that staff can be working on to prepare that draft for the board? So we had discussed at the work session 2 different sort of avenues for that. One is mirroring our election process that we did last year, which is hiring some seasonal staff at the district that were trained by the Thurston County Auditor's Office to conduct elections. And they processed all of our ballot requests and assisted with all of the ballot counting and essentially all of the handling of ballots, and did such a great job. We have some great feedback about them. And the cost associated with that, hiring those seasonal staff was right about $4,500. So versus in years past, we've had the Thurston County Auditor's Office completely run our elections. So it's been completely out of house. Last year, they were unable to. Staff has put in an inquiry into the auditor's office to see if they are able to facilitate our elections process for the 2021 year, should the board be interested in that. And we have not heard back yet if they are able. And I think part of that is they would like a narrowed down time frame of when the board might want to hold the election in order to maybe commit to that. So for reference, having the Thurston County Auditor's Office run our elections in recent years has cost between $15,000 and about $28,000. So a significant difference in cost, but a completely, for the most part, out of house process. So either party would work directly with the election supervisor, who would fill out all of the necessary paperwork. and answer any questions about the election, and is trained by commission staff, Conservation Commission staff. So I hope that that's a good summary of process. Is there any questions at this point?
That was a good summary. Thank you, Sarah. The number of issues raised there in terms of timing, when is the election, who's going to run the election, and then who internally is going to be our lead on this. I'd like to just get feedback from, and as well as when to adopt the resolution. I'd like to just go through each member of the board, since this is a big issue here, and just get your thoughts on that and see if we're all kind of on the same page. Do you mind starting, Doug?
Yeah, I think for timing, the sooner we can do it, the better. I'm very comfortable with Nora White being our TCD lead, and I think we should have a draft resolution in October. We've almost made this whole process pro forma. It's been going so well for so long. I think that's a really good thing. And I think farming it out so there's no possible connection with the outcome and our staff working on it, I think that's a good thing. The disconnect there is good. I'm done.
Thank you, Doug. Betsy.
I'm not sure what Doug meant by farming it out. I'm in favor of doing the contracting thing that we did before. I think partly because we may run into a problem with the auditor's office again in the future, and it would be nice to just say, this is how we do it. We can always do it this way. It doesn't increase or decrease our visibility one way or the other, or our, our ability for people to figure out how to vote. To them, as I recall, it's really no different. And it saves us money. I'm fine with the paperwork part of it, getting the resolution done in October, and I'm certainly fine with Nora being our election supervisor.
Great, thank you. David?
I guess I'd like Doug's response. What did he mean by farming it out versus?
I think not having the conservation district staff or supervisors count the ballots, because we've been charged for a number of years with a bunch of not so good ways to do it. And we went to this process of the county auditors probably about 15, 20 years ago. So they're the elector, they're professionals that do it elections. We're professionals at natural resources management. And my view is we ought to stick close to that. But as far as farming it out goes, I think either to a contractor or the auditor, I think that works fine. I would point out that last year was the first time in 15 years or so, however long we've been doing it with those guys. That's the first time there's ever been an issue.
Okay. Right, David.
Yeah, I really liked last year's model. I think we should do that again and have Nora still in charge of that. She did a great job last year. And I think getting the resolution ready for October, let's get this going. And I agree with Betsy. I like the model we did last year for the elections. And if we could keep this as the way we do it from here on out, so this is just known, that's how we do our elections. I think that'd be good.
Okay, thank you. And Helen.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to defer to others on the process. I don't know if anybody's commented on the time, but I think at the last time we discussed this, we agreed that January was a good time to do it so that it doesn't get in the way of the plant sale. So, I'll throw that in. I'm fine with January, so that would mean doing it, getting rolling like everybody says. I guess I'm still a little bit confused because I don't know what the process last time was, but I remember the discussion being that either way it was contracted out, basically. So I still too am trying to understand, Doug. So are you saying that you'd rather have the auditor do it
No,
or
by
not?
contracting, yeah, you're right. We did contract it out, but we contracted with either the auditor's office or former employees of the auditor's office or part-time employees. I'm comfortable with either way. It is way cheaper to have the individuals do it than the auditor. I think it insulates us a little more though by having the auditor do it. As I said, they're the professionals on elections. But I don't think there's a big risk there, frankly.
Did I answer your question, Helen?
Oh, yes, it does. Thanks.
Anything further, Helen?
No.
Okay. It sounds to me like we're all on the same page here in terms of bringing a resolution forward in October, designating Nora to be our elections officer. I also liked last year's process, and while we might get a little extra credibility if we contracted directly with the auditor, I saw no problem with last year's process contracting with auditor-trained employees, and it does save us significant money, and I'd rather see our resources being used for our mission and not for elections. So I'm happy to contract the way we did last year. The only thing where I may be at odds with some of my colleagues here is in terms of timing. I don't want to do the election in January. I think there is a very, very strong likelihood that we're still going to be arguing over the national election results well into January and up to January 20th inauguration day, possibly. And given what's been in the news and statements people have been making, I think the public will be rather distracted during early part of January with this national crisis in the making. So my preference would be that we hold our election sometime after January 20th, when presumably those issues would have been settled and people might be ready to re-engage a little bit more at a local level. So either late January or maybe early February. Around here, early February is a time people are used to voting. That's when the school levies are always out. So it's sort of a time that people expect to be voting anyway. But I just definitely would want to keep it out of that first half of January. I just think it's going to be, people aren't going to be in a space to concentrate on our election at that point.
I think that's a really excellent point.
One thought I had, it's a plant sale in March.
Yeah, the plant sale is the first Saturday in March.
So I was wondering if we could use the plant sale to, help spread the word about the election, even though we're not going to vote at the plant sale.
We could definitely do the election post the plant sale. That is, as long as we do it by the end of March, and leave a little bit of time at the end of the month for wrapping up all of the process and submitting the proper paperwork and forms and such before the end of March. So that is a possibility to do it in the second or third week of March. I would maybe ask that I have the opportunity to circle back around with Nora and staff just to see what the feasibility of that might look like for staff workload. As Nora mentioned, she's the lead on the plant sale for coordination, as well as she's been our past election supervisor. And so participating and answering questions and supporting an elections team during and over plant sale might be a lot of workload on her plate to do both and have a lot of focused attention on both. But that's definitely something that I can connect with her about and ask.
Okay, so that sounds good. It sounds like we're all on the same page here with just about everything. And I think the only real question out there is the timing. And I heard Doug concur with me that we probably want to keep it out of that early January cycle. So let's look at a timeline from roughly the end of January through the middle of March. and see how that works with our staff capacity. Does that sound fair and okay to everyone?
Sounds good to me.
That sounds great to me. Can I make one clarification, TJ?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just have heard a couple of folks referring to the arrangement that we had last year as contracting. And I just want to share that there was not a contractual relationship there. There was definitely a separation of duties and responsibilities, but we hired seasonal staff that were trained by the auditor's office that are their seasonal staff for their elections, essentially. So it's just a different mechanism of engaging those folks. So just to put clarity on the record there for that, and the process that we developed with the separation of duties was vetted by Mary Hall, who's our Thurston County auditor. She helped us, since they were unable to facilitate the election, she helped us develop this approach. So I just want to put those things on the record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's an important clarification.
Question, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I appreciate that clarification too, because I think it's a good one. Do we want to put this on the work session schedule?
Yeah, it sounds like we need to. So Sarah will be able to come back to us with additional information on timing of staff capacity. So let's put this on the October work session list. And with that, I think we need to move on to the next item on our agenda here. Item C, 7C, is the interlocal agreement on rates and charges. Sarah sent us out some information on that today. And as she noted, it's essentially the same agreement that we already have in place with the county, with 3 exceptions, one of which the county initiated and 2 of which we initiated. And I'm hoping that unless folks have heartburn, that we can actually take action on this item this evening. So Sarah, do you want to say anything further about specifically the 3 changes? I don't think we need to go through the whole contract, given that we've already had it in place for a while, but anything about the changes and the differences between last year's contract and this year's contract?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just reiterate for the record that we've been operating under our 2019 rates and charges MO, Memorandum of Agreement, and obviously the authorizing ordinances from the county commissioners that were passed and resolutions by the TCD board. And that this has been in development and review over at Thurston County for several months this year, and certainly with COVID-19, their workload was bogged down. So we got this back. The changes that were made here, just a quick review of the only one that was added from our 2019 interlocal agreement by Thurston County was this last whereas here. Which I think just demonstrates some good faith support by our county commissioners. And there were 2 changes made from TCD's standpoint, from staff and former supervisors actually helped this. And that is here under the accounting, just some rephrasing here of how our internal chart of accounts is outlined, and detailing how our budgeting process works. So just cleaning up some language to make sure that the process accurately mirrors what happens internally at TCD as we continue to refine processes and procedures. And the last change was just that there's not any sort of earmarked dollars included in here or conditions of funding included in here. So, asking the TCD board to participate in or do any sort of specific activities or direct any funding towards any specific program allocations. It's left to the discretion of the board and their public planning processes, like developing the annual plan and developing the annual budget that directs the use of these dollars. So still has all of the same, regular restrictions that are in here, but for example, we had some language about creating a policy for Citizens Advisory Committee in our 2019 MOA, and the board did that. So this is current and relevant. Is there any questions on that? That was a good summary of the changes here.
I would ask what the staff recommendation is.
Approve.
Thank you.
Any questions? Or if not, go ahead, Betsy. Do you have a question?
No.
Okay. Then I would entertain a motion on the MOU between Thurston County and the Thurston Conservation District.
I will move approval of the agreement between the county and the district.
It's been moved by Doug. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, I think Betsy got in there first, so Betsy seconded. Roll call vote. Doug?
Aye.
Betsy?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Helen?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. It has passed unanimously. Thank you. Next
job,
item on the
Thanks,
item on the agenda is attendance at the WACD Southwest Area Meeting. As a reminder, that is scheduled for Friday, October 9th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And I'm assuming the intention here, Sarah, is you just want to figure out who's going to be participating, right?
Sorry, I forgot to pause my screen there. Yeah, this was a request actually that was brought forth by a supervisor to see who would be attending the Southwest area meeting. I plan to participate and present our organizational update unless the board wishes otherwise. We have one resolution that was just passed to present at this meeting. There was a recommendation, depending on what supervisors participate, as to who would present this resolution to the committee. So taking a little bit of a roll call of who is planning on participating would help identify who's going to present that resolution at the Southwest area meeting.
Thank you. So let's just go through. Doug, I assume you are participating.
Yes.
Okay. Betsy?
I was not planning to.
David?
I'm planning to.
Okay. And Helen?
Yeah, I've got it on my calendar. I did have a question. Is it going to be in Ridgefield or is it going to be online?
It's online. It's virtual.
It's online. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And I won't be able to participate. I'll be processing chickens that day, harvesting chickens. So it looks like we'll have 3 supervisors there, Doug and Helen and David. And I know my suggestion would be, particularly in terms of presenting the resolution, that we ask Doug to do that as the author of the resolution and the person who has the history on that issue.
Sure, I'll be glad to do that, but I think you're chickening out on us, TJ.
Yeah. Well,
I couldn't resist.
Yep, I literally am chickening out.
No, I'll be glad to do.
And I thought last year, I attended last year. I thought Sarah did a great job of doing the presentation of what we've been up to for the last year. So if the board's okay with that, I'd also suggest that we ask Sarah to do that again.
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah,
Okay.
concur.
You got your direction there, Sarah.
Thank you. And I just want to give a little update. The date of the Southwest area meeting is October 15th, which is a Thursday.
Oh, I had it down as the 9th. I'm sorry. So I won't be processing chickens, but I will be on vacation, so I still can't make it.
I retract my chicken statement.
Thank you. Okay, so let's then move on to the next item that we added to the agenda here, item E, which is the shore-friendly consultant services contract for a consulting geologist. Sarah sent us a copy of that this afternoon, and And my sense is that there is some urgency to get someone on board here so that we can continue this work during the good weather window here. But I'll turn it over to Sarah here to give us a little more context, and then hoping the board is ready to take action on this after we get an introduction and clarifications.
Yeah, thank you, TJ. And certainly feel free to ask questions, or if you'd like to see a specific element of the document. It's 10 pages in total, but it was sent out electronically prior to the meeting, not included in your packet. So this is part of our Shore-Friendly Thurston program, which the program itself and the current dollars that we have are to look at and prioritize areas along the Puget Sound shoreline within Thurston County that are in need of assistance. And this grant provides not only some technical assistance dollars for our staff to go out and meet with landowners and address any sort of shoreline issues that they may have, things like unstable bluffs, but also look at reestablishing natural shoreline processes. So removing bulkheads, doing natural shoreline landscaping. And so whenever you're working in these, highly erodible landscapes, there's a lot of liability and concern and expertise that's needed. So part of the grant is to contract with some of those outside expertise that we need in order to move these recommendations forward so that we can design some projects to restore Puget Sound shoreline, work and assist these landowners, which again, this funding source that we have currently also includes dollars for doing the implementation component of that. So it's a great program that we have that's shore-friendly, Thurston again. And it's part of a partnership actually throughout all of South Sound that we have with Pierce Conservation District and Mason Conservation District. So we worked with council to develop a request for qualifications that went out per our TCD procurement policy. This is a personal services contract that's before you here, which has been reviewed and vetted again by council for the district, as well as reviewed and approved by the selected consultant. So it's before the board now, sort of in its final draft form for considered approval. It would be ideal, just given the pressing nature of this of this grant program, to move forward with getting these folks on board so that we can continue to do our analysis and provide these recommendations so that we can then funnel them through, of course, the processes of design and construction and implementation. So that's a really high-level overview, but if anybody has any additional questions, I would be more than happy to address those.
I'd like to make a further note before there are questions.
Sure.
Both the process under our new procurement policy and the contract itself has been a result of a tremendous amount of staff work and some of my assistance. But I want to note that the district in the past has been criticized for a lack of contractual formality. And this process was a completely different model of exactly the kind of formality that should put those concerns to rest to the extent that they're legitimate concerns. This was done with really particular attention to a very high standard of public contract formality. And it's part of our new process. The process is just getting started, but I think that this result shows that it is a very workable and good process.
Thank you, Ben. So are there questions for either Sarah or Ben about the contract?
I read it through, and I was wondering if we were supposed to have been looking at I think it was Appendix A, because I didn't see it, but maybe we weren't, it wasn't important for us to see. I think it's where the actual rubber hits the road in terms of what they're getting paid for specifically, but maybe I'm wrong. And I don't know if we need to see it or not.
Can you respond to that, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm going to take a look at that really quick, Helen, and see where exactly that's referenced in this document. I think that that's the scope of work that it's referencing that will be generated. I think that this outlines the duties associated, and then once the technical assistance has been provided, I think that there's further layers of direction and scope of work to be generated. But let me take a look at that real quick. If folks have some other questions, I'm gonna.
Yeah, well, while you're looking at that, I'll answer too. I believe that is correct. This is a general services contract that basically onboards a geologist, but does not yet assign them any specific tasks. It provides for how tasks are to be performed, how tasks are to be paid for, but the specific scope of work is project related, and that is only generated across from a project, and it's generated anew each time for each project within the limits of how much it will cost provided by the general service agreement. That's what I remember, but maybe Sarah can confirm that.
Thank you.
That was a good clarification, Ben.
Yeah, and so here's some further detail. I think you saw, Helen, it looks a little confusing in the electronic packet, as this is a cover sheet. Essentially, Exhibit A is a cover sheet. And then this is the scope of work with the detail in the budget here. Were you asking if there should be additional detail included? This does include the budget and the deliverables. As far as providing technical consultation during marine shoreline visits and workshops, etc. Again, with the budget that's associated here, anything that's more detailed than this, I think, will arise once we are actually on the ground and looking at what the landscape looks like and working with the geologists to create, to make recommendations to create designs and projects.
Okay, so Helen, did you get your question answered?
Yeah, I guess it was just Exhibit A then. It wasn't an appendix, it was an exhibit. Okay.
Okay, so if there are no further questions, I'd like to entertain a motion on the professional services contract 2020-01.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, who was that?
David?
That was David.
Okay, so David moves approval of professional services contract 2020-01. Is there a second?
I second it. Betsy.
Betsy has seconded. Okay, roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Betsy?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Helen?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. It passes unanimously. Thank you. We're running just a little bit behind here. We have one more item on under governance before we move to our executive session, and that's just a recap of our October work session topic list. Do you have that in front of you? Can you share that with us, Sarah?
Yeah, here is the draft so far that I've been editing during tonight's meeting. You will see the elections update here with the draft resolution included. The WDFW survey is on here, as well as Conservation and Education Center discussion. the big ticket item for sure, in addition to elections, is our annual budget draft review. So staff is well on track to send out the draft budget for review next week prior to this work session. But would love review, discussion, and revision. And the proposed staff update for this meeting is from our South Sound Green program, who has traditionally been a field trip based experiential learning support program for K-12. And in this new world, they have adapted everything that they've known in a very short period of time to still offer the same quality activities and support for teachers and families and schools. And so a little bit of an update on that. So that's what I have on the list. Is there anything that I can add or remove?
Could you scroll up to the top, please? Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. I couldn't remember if we had 2 hours or 2.5 hours, because it does look like a media agenda, but we have a full 2.5 hours. So is there anything anyone wants to add to this, or any questions? Or can we consider this our approved draft for now?
Well, I was going to
Could
throw
you scroll
in.
down slowly again?
Oh, go ahead. Helen first and then Doug.
Oh yeah, that just the public comment on the Thurston climate action. It shouldn't be a big deal.
Yep, that's right. Thank you. We need to put that on this agenda.
Yeah, it shouldn't take very long.
Is there any particular place that you would like to include that?
Let's do it between 8 and 9. Good catch, Helen. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. If not, then we're going to move into an executive session, the purpose of which is to discuss pending litigation with our legal counsel. The people present in that executive session will be all of the supervisors, our executive director, and our legal counsel. I expect that we will take no more than 20 minutes in executive session, and we will take no actions. We will reconvene in the public meeting at the end of executive session for a report out and the remaining items on our agenda here. The process is that Sarah is sending us a separate link. So we will log out of this meeting, we will log into the executive session, and then no more than 20 minutes later, we will come back into this public meeting. So for those of you not joining us in the executive session, you can expect to see us back on this meeting site in approximately 20 minutes. Time is now 7:08, so let's say by 7:28, we should be back in public meeting.
It very well might not take that much time, so we might be back
I will say
earlier than that.
no later than 7:28.
TJ?
Yeah.
TJ, can I remind you that we do need to have public comment because it got postponed?
Yes, I have that on. It'll happen when we come back into the public meeting.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll see you all on the other side.
I don't see a notice yet.
A notice was sent out, but I will resend that to the board so it's at the top of your email.
I just got it, so thank you. Okay, it looks like most of us are back here. I think we're waiting on Betsy. Are folks hearing me okay? I seem to have an unstable connection.
Loud
I
and
hear
clear,
you fine,
TJ.
DJ.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're good.
One more minute to see. There we go. Robin's back.
So how many chickens are you doing, TJ?
30.
30.
Yep. That'll be enough for one day.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to reconvene our public board meeting here. The time is now 7:20. The board and legal counsel and our executive director just held a short executive session to discuss pending litigation. We heard from our attorney. We asked clarifying questions and no action was taken. That's the report. So with that, we have added an additional public comment period to our agenda at this point. I don't think there's anyone from the public on our call at this point or on our conference at this point, but if there is and they would like to address the board, now's the time. No public comment. Okay, that then moves us to item 10, the other reports. First up here is supervisor reports. Just go through the list here. Doug, do you have anything?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Helen?
No, just public comment is now open on, as Doug pointed out. I think Doug sent the information out on the climate action plan.
Yep. And we'll come back to talk about that at our work session. David, do you have a report?
No report this week.
Okay. Two things that I will report on here. We have finally got a couple of meetings nailed down now with the City of Olympia to continue this discussion about the Spooner Farm property and farmland mitigation in the city. The first meeting will be October 2nd. And our staff from the district will be bringing back some additional information that was requested by the group and kind of what we're calling ground truthing a little bit of the data that we had looked at the last meeting. And then there's a subsequent meeting, I believe it's going to be on the 9th, with city staff, including the parks director. The Parks Department, which is where this conversation originally started last year, continues to be concerned about the cost of mitigating farmland loss having to be borne by Park Department budgets. And I think they've been having some conversations with Councilmember Madrone about that. And they requested a meeting with her, and both Sarah and I think are going to be participating in that meeting with Councilmember Madrone and some of the city staff. This is not a new issue. It's the issue they brought up when we talked last year about, you know, the city has money to build parks. They shouldn't be using that money to mitigate farmland loss. So we'll listen to what they have to say, and I'll certainly report back on both of these meetings at the next time we all get together. The second thing that I wanted to note is that I will not be at the October board meeting. I am taking an end of farm season vacation for the first time in many, many months. So I will not be there on the 22nd, and Betsy will be chairing the meeting. That's my report. That takes us to Sarah, Executive Director report.
Thanks, TJ. Mine is a similarly themed as yours on the topic of farmland preservation. You can hear somebody woke up to join us. So I have been working with partners and communicating with partners, just trying to begin to aggregate folks to have a good conversation centered around farmland preservation, identifying needs, collecting and gathering data, aggregating funding sources, and beginning to have some community meetings to assess interest from the agricultural community in things like easements. And so I met with Stephen Bramwell over the Ag Faculty and Extension Director at Thurston WSU Extension, and had a good conversation with him this week, and have had good conversations with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and NRCS, but we're gearing up to sort of write a two-pager on kind of the approach that we would like to engage partners and community moving forward, to make this a really robust, inclusive, sort of coalition-based process to address farmland preservation and pooling resources and sharing knowledge and meeting multiple priorities. So that's a really high-level summary, but I'm excited. It seems like there's some tangible workshops, education opportunities, and community information gathering meetings that WSU is interested in partnering with the district on in the winter months. So I look forward to synthesizing that information on paper with Stephen and other partners, and then sharing that back to the board for thoughts and revisions and including process. So that's my report.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, that then concludes our business this evening. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
David moves to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second, Helen.
Second, Helen. Okay, roll call vote. David?
Aye.
Helen?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
I don't think Betsy got back here, so I will say I vote aye. And with that, we have voted to adjourn, and our meeting is concluded. Thank you all for a productive meeting, and we'll see you at the work session on October 8th.
Thank you.
Thank you.